We need to fight every day, fight them here, fight them there. Just let them through. They've destroyed themselves. Trump has done more, 50 times more to destroy himself than the Democrats have done to destroy him. And he's going to keep destroying himself.
We're going to start off with one of my favorite towns, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Laura. Laura asked you, James, the Democrats, she thinks, have shown great determination in recent events, release of the Epstein files for most of the shutdown fight. She's wants you to tell her, how do we turn that into a strategy and a message moving into the election year?
Well, first of all, Laura, your question has so many things that I want to talk about, and I thank you for it. The first thing is that you had all of the hand wringing. The Democrats don't have a plan. The Democrats don't have a leader. The Democrats don't have a message. The Democrats caved on the budget bill. The Democrats are in total disarray. That Trump is a juggernaut. He's dominating the news cycle. Oh, shit. Did you, I mean, I'm not spinning you out, Laura. Of course, you saw the election returns. You saw what's happened. You saw in the Marist poll about who they blamed for the shutdown. 2-1, they blame the Republicans in Congress and Trump more than they blame the Democrats because people are not stupid. All right. In a party without a candidate, a designated presidential candidate, is very difficult to have a message. However, what we can have, and what we did very successfully in this November, and I think we can do it very successfully next November, is we can have an argument. And the argument is that we need to put brakes on this. We need to stop this. This is not who we are. They're not doing anything about the matters that affect you and your life. And there's corruption and everything else. That's an argument. Then we have a candidate, we have a message. But I will say this. For all of the carping and the second guessing and, oh, how could you say that? We need to fight every day, fight them here, fight them there. Just let them through. They've destroyed themselves. Trump has done more, 50 times more to destroy himself than the Democrats have done to destroy him. And he's going to keep destroying himself. And I hate to say this, we're not going to be able to have a message, but we can have an argument. And we have to have the argument with the Republicans, not among ourselves. The time for that is in the primaries for president in 2028. That's why I was particularly distressed to see a story. I don't know if it was Mandami, but people around Mandami are talking about primarying Dan Goldman. Of all the people in the world we don't need to be fighting with, Dan Goldman would be in the top tier of people we don't need to be fighting with.
Boy, are you right? Because if the Democrats take back the House and they have the kind of investigations they ought to have, he's one of a handful of people who know how to do that as a former prosecutor in the Southern District. Primarying him would be insane.
Stupid. Just stupid. Don't. Right. And by the way, if you want to be in the progressive wing, or you want to be the urban, young, cool, future forward-looking person that wants to all the fossils, get a presidential candidate and get behind that candidate and let other Democrats decide.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to win.
Right. That's absolutely true.
You're not going to win.
James Gordon in Norwood, Michigan said there seems to be a consensus building on the left that the country is not ready for a woman president. Michelle Obama recently said this. Your thoughts on that and Michelle as a candidate? I disagree. I just simply disagree. Michelle Obama is not going to be a candidate, so you can get rid of that thought. But the fact is that Hillary Clinton, who won the popular vote in 2016, it was a flawed campaign. It really, really was. And I think with a good campaign, she would have won the Electoral College too. And in 2024, the circumstances were different. Joe Biden is the prime culprit of what happened. But Kamala Harris was not a good candidate. I don't know who, but I think if a strong woman candidate came, I don't know whether it's a Gretchen Whitmer or I'm gonna just stay on Michigan or Alyssa Slotkin. I don't think the country would automatically reject a woman candidate.
So I got a call, reporter doing a profile on Gretchen Whitmer, and she was the author of my favorite political observation of this century. just fix the damn roads. All right.
Right.
She, yeah, so many women and Democratic women in Michigan government, and it's amazing. I mean, who they have elected, what they've done. You're right. Point out that Ms. Clinton lost because of a somewhat of a flawed campaign strategy, but also it was a distributional fluke. All right. So let's understand it. The next thing is we're not going to stop nominating women, nor should we. So the question now, what has changed, and we all know this, that we all had to be part of the identity politics. Biden had to promise that he'd have a black woman, a woman of color. Well, I hate that slogan. I even hate to say it, but okay, that became what that doesn't matter this time. No one is, if in fact we nominate a woman or we nominate a white male, no one's going to make that an issue. That's what's changed about American politics. You can still elect women. You can certainly still elect non-white people to office, and we do it all the time, and we should do that. But being a white male this time was more or less a barrier in the earlier part of this decade. That is not going to be the case in 2028.
James, I totally agree. And I would say, for instance, to be completely hypothetical, if the Democrats were to nominate a ticket of Andy Bashir and Gavin Newsom, and anyone complained about its lack of diversity, they're just crazy. I mean,
And it's not even, understand, it's not even going to, if someone says it, they're going to get slapped down immediately. Right. But it was part of the argument during that time.
It was
Democratic politics.
That's why Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris. It was right. Quite clear. He made that.
And that became.
And then, James, just me add to that, because he went on, and when you read all these inside accounts down, you talk to people in there, what Joe Biden picked her as his vice president, and then went on and said in 23 and 24, I've got to run because she's not capable of winning or governing. That's a terrible indictment of Joe Biden.
I guess, I tend to say, look, the guy, he just wanted to do it, and he was looking for every excuse to tell himself it was okay to do it. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying when you arrive at a fundamentally catastrophic decision, that is that I am going to run for reelection. And by the way, he kept at that decision from the night of June the 27th until July the 21st.
Yeah.
It was over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you say you're going to do something, you're always looking for the justification. Well, the justification was she couldn't win. I was the only Democrat that could win. And it was all bullshit. And you hate to do it because you like Biden. You think he's not gotten near the credit that he deserves. But man, he just made one awful mistake.
Well, let's pick up on that from our next question, which is to you, and it's from Nicholas in Bakersfield, California, who asked if the recent Democratic victories were less about a shift in the electorate and more about the fact that earlier the Democrats were weighted down, he says, by having Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket.
Okay. First of all, I'm a big believer that economics plays a huge role in every election. I think the cruelty mattered. I mean, if you look at California, which had nothing to do with economics, it was overwhelming. People were just, and certainly affordability costs were a factor in this. You didn't see that happening with Trump. But this was, the thing about this last election, it was everywhere. It was overwhelming. There wasn't one place that you could pick out. Maybe if you picked out Erie County, it was way out of the norm, but it could be other reasons for that.
Oh, but those retention judges got over 60%. So you're right, James.
Exactly. It was California, it was Pennsylvania, it was Georgia, it was Mississippi. It was wherever you looked.
Yeah,
it was there. And I think all the evidence is this is going to do nothing but continue. And I think people are starting to figure that out. And now you're starting to see these polls. I think it was Peter Hanna. And Peter, if I'm giving you credit for something you don't deserve, well, fuck it, I think. But as I recall, I read this morning, I think it was.
Take it.
Somebody went back and looked at the turnout in college towns in Virginia, Harrisonburg, where JMU is, Charlottesville, Blacksburg, William and Mary, okay, even at the historically black colleges, it was higher than it was in 2024. I mean, a lot of this, part of the Democratic base that we lost a little bit with these college towns, man, did they come roaring back. And they went through every one, most of the places I've been to these college towns in Virginia. And like I say, in Albemarle County, was the turnout in 2025 was higher than the presidential year. And I think it was true in Blacksburg too. I mean, it's hard to imagine that kind of turnout distortion that you have. And we were told, oh, the young people had all turned on the Democrats. That was it. It all turned away. And
That
okay,
reminds me, James, one of my more embarrassing moments. I traveled with Obama in October in '08, and we stopped in Harrisonburg, Virginia, home of James Madison. And they said the last presidential candidate to be here was Stephen Douglas. And I said to the local guy, I said, well, how did Lincoln do in Harrisonburg? He said, Sir, Lincoln wasn't on the ballot.
that's right.
So in any event, John in Chicago asked, should Democrats in the next election cycle fix the Affordable Care Act, which basically puts Band-Aids on a broken system, or should they push for universal health care? John, pushing for universal health care, pushing for Medicare for all would be insane. I'm sorry, people will not accept it. We've seen that in elections. We see it everywhere. What you should do, and I disagree with that the ACA is only putting Band-Aids on a broken system. There's some 20 million people who are now insured, and Zeke Emanuel can tell you how many deaths that has avoided. You build on it. You haven't had as much of a chance as you should have had to build on it, but those healthcare tax subsidies help build on it. And there may be some things you do about cost, but you don't try to turn to a Medicare for all. The Affordable Health Care Act is a good foundation.
I agree, and always the problem with that argument is that you're telling people, and let's just take one class of people that are important and they do great work and out of public place, and
Yep.
so much of what their compensation is in benefits. So
Yep.
you take a fireman in Charlottesville, Virginia, and you tell that fireman whose union has negotiated her or him or whatever a pretty generous health care, and you're going to say, we're going to take you out of that. You can't have that. We're just going to put you in the whole Medicare system, and all that that is not going to go over well. If many people have said, well, if you were going to start from scratch, you would have a system of Medicare for all. That may very well be, but we're not starting
Yes.
from scratch. Okay.
Yes. If it was 1947, yes.
Yeah, great.
But yeah.
But understand, and it sounds good. It sounds reasonable. It sounds simple. And remember, it killed Elizabeth Warren when she came out with it in Iowa. And the reason it killed her was interesting. It wasn't that these people, these Democrats in Iowa, were against it. They thought it was electoral poison. Democrats don't want to nominate someone who's for Medicare for all. Not so that Democrats have a huge problem with it, but they think it very correctly. It's an electoral downer.
Yeah, and it also played a role in Kamala Harris's disastrous 2019 campaign as she
Oh,
went back and forth on it. So it's just build on the ACA. First of all, James, remember how unpopular it was 10, 12 years ago? It's now popular. 60% of the people support it. 70% of the people want to have those healthcare tax subsidies extended. So the
it is.
Republicans are going to put out some kind of phony healthcare plan pretty soon, and it's something that'll be a gift to Democrats.
So understand that anything that the Democrats do, the Republicans will say is socialist, or they'll say it's communist. So it doesn't matter. The health care is one giant part of this. The thing that's coming in this country, and we're not ready for it, and that is the accumulation of generational wealth by our generation, actually a little bit older than the baby boomers. It's just these stories that are coming out, and the young people have they're just having it terribly. They can't buy houses, they can't educate anybody. there was the CEO of Ford saying there's 5,000 auto mechanic jobs that they have that they can't fill. And I think that this country made two bad bets. And they both seem like good bets at the time. One is we decided we're going to be a nation of homeowners, and two, that we're going to be a nation of people that went to college. So the main thing that the government encouraged was owning your own home and people going to 4-year colleges. It's now pretty clear that both of those strategies are in effect blowing up in our faces. And I think they were done with the right intention, but young people are out of the housing market. They're basically out of the education market because the way that we've done this. And the next president is going to have to rethink this and is going to have to embrace some economic populism, because I'm going to tell you, this thing could break. And if somebody doesn't get ahead of it, it's going to get ahead of everybody else. And people are starting to get really pissed. They're starting to figure out what's happened to their lives. They're starting to figure out why they don't have a lot of hope to get a good job or to be able to buy a house, because people, once all of us bought houses, we put zoning restrictions and God knows what else just to drive the price of the asset up, which was our price of our asset goes up. The price of what a young person has to pay goes up too. We got to really rethink this whole idea of 4-year
Yeah.
college and home ownership.
You know, James, my really esteemed colleague, a great reporter and writer, David Wessel, 16 or 17 years ago, wrote a book which said the pillar of our economic future and growth really is community colleges, junior colleges,
Oh, Trace,
and we foolishly cut back on some of those investments in critical states. And that is even more true today than it was when David wrote it. If we invest more in that, Ford will not be without without machinists.
$120,000 a year. Jim
Yeah.
Farley, it was in the Wall Street Journal today that he said, if you got a bay, we'll pay you 120 grand a year. I mean, that's a starting salary. Shit, so you get a master's in French literature. What's your starting salary?
Yeah.
Look,
The reason I'm laughing is that my daughter is now a clinical psychologist, and she was earlier a mechanic. Maybe she ought to go back to being a
I was
mechanic.
talking to Lauren without being preachy about it. Girl, grab that, turn that wrench, move it, man.
Oh man, I'll
It's
tell you.
everywhere. Yes, I was talking to Lauren. I didn't want you wanted to bring a name up. That's fine.
Simon in Cincinnati. I like some of these last questions, James. Simon asks, should we create a January 6th museum so people can remember it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It should not so much that they remember it, is that they never forget it.
Right.
And they never forget that their countrymen, by and large, 45% of their countrymen actually approved of this.
Right.
Okay, and which was a massive criminal act. So yes, we should, and that not so much that people remember it, but I guess that people never forget it, because it can happen.
Yeah, and I want my grandchildren and their friends and their children to know that there was a time after the Civil War where there were people who tried to violently overthrow the United States government, and they were all pardoned and excused.
They would have hung Mike Pence.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I really believe that. They'd have gotten hopeful.
Thank God Josh Hawley has a splinter speed, or Lord knows what would have happened to him.
Yeah.
But Alex in Morris, Illinois. James, you know where Morris is?
I do not.
I don't either. We'll check. We'll get our crack guy Dan Max to check and find out where Morris is, and Alex will honor your hometown next week. He asks, why haven't the Democrats reintroduced the bipartisan immigration bill? It would demonstrate Democrats are open to real reform, proper funding, and humanitarian treatment. I don't think you want to introduce a bill now. I'm not even sure you want to introduce a bill if you take the majority in 2027. I think what you do want to do is say, here is the Democrats' position. We want a really tough border. We want a really, really tough border. We want to have a pathway to citizenship that's realistic and take some time. And we do want to have humanitarian treatment. What the Biden administration sadly did was they forgot about the first part. And so therefore the rest didn't make any difference. And people forget in the 2012 presidential election, that was Barack Obama's position, and Mitt Romney back then was really much more closer to Trump's position now. And voters, when they voted on that issue, sided with Obama.
I yes, and in politics, one of the things it changes a lot, and Romney justifiably credited Massachusetts, had pretty aggressive healthcare
He did,
when he was,
and he was a good senator too.
and but things like I always point out to people that in 2008, both Hillary and Obama were against gay marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows you how fast that the ground shifts. And you just what's I don't know if I've seen ground shift as fast as it is shifting here in the United States. I mean, we just can't appreciate how big some of these shifts were, this past election. And if it continues anything like in that direction, I saw that the appellate court knocked out the Texas redistricting plan. I am not totally positive that they didn't do the Republicans a favor.
Yeah.
I'm totally positive of that.
And my fear is the Supreme Court will turn that down because they always side with Republicans. But it is one thing. You're absolutely right about redistricting is not going to be the big bonanza that Donald Trump
Right.
thought.
If I were the lawyers wanting it to overturn it, I would subtly argue that if this went through, it would be bad for Republicans because that would affect the decision of this court more than anything else.
Yeah, sure would.
If they think there's a chance it could hurt the Republicans, then
James, we keep coming back to John in Gurnee, Illinois. John writes every week. But John, we like your questions. So, James, he wants to know regarding the Supreme Court's decision on giving Trump broad immunity, one of the worst decisions in the last 20 years, wouldn't this immunity retroactively also cover Biden, Obama, and Clinton? And if so, why does Trump keep threatening to investigate him?
Well, I don't. First of all, I think so. It would have to be something they did as president.
That's true.
First of all, I think the statute of limitations probably long gone on it.
On Clinton and Obama, for sure.
Yeah. So it's a now what the Supreme Court said is contrary to everything that you learned as a kid, that we live in this country because everybody is subject to the law. We have no kings, and they said actually we do have a king. And now, of course, when Trump is not president, how are they going to live with that precedent? How are they going to deal with that? I don't think these guys think very much further than that. And I do think, and I continue to believe, that there is a crisis of confidence in this country in a branch of government. And I think that lack of confidence is well deserved when it comes to the Supreme Court. And I think the country's got to think about what can we do? What kind of intervention can we undertake that can restore confidence in that third branch of government, particularly Supreme Court?
James, a question: if in 2024, hypothetically, if the same exact case had come before this Supreme Court, involving presidential immunity, but it was Joe Biden and not Donald Trump, do you think the decision would have been the same?
Oh, of course not. The only problem they have, they're going to have to go through some intellectual gymnastics, which I might do. But they don't even tell you. They're shout a docket, and they just don't assign reasons. Just fuck you. This is what we say is the law, and we don't even have to justify it. Which I guess you say they have the power to do, but why would you head a branch of government? You're John Roberts. Why wouldn't you want the institution that you had to have confidence and credibility with the public? It always almost always has before. You have lost all of it, man. And we're all better off if we have a court that people don't always agree with, but respect and think that it struggles to find answers. And sometimes it comes up with answers we disagree with. We can live with that. This court does not do that.
Yeah.
It comes to a conclusion, and it just tells you what his conclusion is, and then I'm much fucking interested in telling you why. And it all started with Bush v. Gore, where they said, you can't use this conclusion for anything else other than this because honestly, it makes no fucking sense when we're getting ready to rule. That's what they said. That's exactly what they said. And that told them that you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And they're getting away with it the whole time. Now, Trump ain't going to get away with it. They've caught on with him.
Well,
they don't.
Keep those questions coming. We love them. And for all you out there, if you want to know how bad the governor of Louisiana is and how much he's trying to mess up a great state university, both academically and even his football team, just look at James Carville's jersey today, right now.
I got more. I got my UC Berkeley shirt. I'm gonna get my Ohio U Bobcats.
This is what you did, Governor Landry.
That's it.
Okay. Keep those questions coming, and we'll be back next week.